Hey, hi, SoFi. Hi, friends. It's Ashley Stahl here. I'm your resident career expert over at SoFi. Maybe you know me from being a counterterrorism professional. Maybe you know me from TEDx, whatever it is. I'm just so excited to be here with Rebecca Minkoff. And if you haven't heard of her, you've got to get yourself up on your fashion game. She is the co-founder of Rebecca Minkoff, which is a global fashion brand. She's a designer. She's the co-founder of the Female Founder Collective, which is a network of businesses led by women, supporting women with a mission to enable and empower female-owned and led businesses to really impact our communities, whether it's socially, economically. She's working on her book right now. She's got tons of lessons learned I'm really excited to ask her about. And most importantly, she's a mother of three. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for being here with me.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I know that, there's been some huge changes to your business and I think the fashion world as a whole, and I just want to get straight to it because I know it's probably front of mind for you in your business right now. What are you experiencing with the reduction in department stores? Because I know that about 70% of your business, if I'm accurate, you can correct me there, with the temporary closure of department stores has been lost. So talk to me a little bit about how you've been navigating the choppy waters.
So right at the beginning of this, probably I'd say March 13th, we started getting letters from every single one of our wholesale partners, not able to take the goods in. Stores were obviously closed. And we really had to figure out very quickly how we were going to pivot, how we were going to just become a direct to consumer business for the time being. It was probably the hardest, most exhausting, most scary time as an entrepreneur to try and figure this out. And we really just said, okay, let's take all the attention that we have always prioritized over these companies and focus on us. How do we want to communicate? What do we want to communicate? Let's really get tight on our future orders. And so the team has been incredible and we've really worked hard to pivot. Thankfully, department stores are starting to open up and we're seeing, the appetite begin to come back a little bit. So I think we're going to obviously open up our business back, but we never want to be in a situation again where we're at the mercy of someone just simply canceling an order and leaving you with the goods. So I think for us, it's about how do we go back to what this new normal is in a safer, smarter way. So we're working through those details now. And in the meantime, just continuing to really just make our experience for our customer as strong and as connected to our consumer as it can be.
It's amazing. And I imagine there's a lot of female entrepreneurs who have like small fashion shops, like I see on Instagram and stuff like that. And it feels like everything's going on sale. There's a lot of stress with keeping up with consumer demand when the demand has just diminished. What are some tips perhaps for female founders in the fashion world? And also just for everybody listening, what do you see for the future of fashion?
So I think there's a couple of things. There's a silver lining to all this that, these huge companies have legacy debt. They have huge leases and footprints. They have inventory, more inventory than they know what to do with. So they're, while you might think as a small business, it's really difficult for you right now, you are in a far safer, better place because you don't have this overwhelming load on you to be able to pivot. You can do things a lot more quickly. So take solace in the fact that it's okay if you're smaller. And I wouldn't be thinking about growth right now. I'd be thinking about staying alive, and optimizing, go to what is working. I don't think that today is the right area to just test random new things. If you have a golden product, put your money behind that. Don't shrink on marketing. Marketing up until I would say last week was really cheap. And don't shrink away from that opportunity to get in front of new eyeballs. As far as the future of fashion, we're really cutting very close to orders, if a little bit under, so that we sell out. Mm-hmm. If you want more, great, you get to wait. Great. And we're willing to take that risk rather than be stuck with inventory that gets outdated very fast. Mm-hmm. I think you'll see a lot of brands, there was this rise of a zillion brands, a new brand every day. And I think that will begin to sort of slow down. And I think you'll see the casualization of fashion. It just has to happen. Everyone's in their pajamas all day. Yeah. And so I think people might want to wear fancy pajamas, but there's still going to be, there's a lot of people that are working from home now permanently. So I don't think the need to consume as much is going to be like how it was before.
Yeah, and I've read a lot of data on working remotely, and it seems to be like a really mixed bag that while some employees, as much as 50% feel more productive, there's still a huge portion that want to go back to the office. And yet it's very divided, I think, with the millennial generation demanding working remote. Is this something that's coming up in your business, this idea of working remote, and what does that bring up for you as the entrepreneur?
So there's a couple things. Prior to the pandemic, you couldn't pay me to believe in the idea of working from home. I thought it was just an opportunity for an employee to slack off.
Yeah.
Now that we've survived and thrived during this time as a company, I'm a full believer in it. I know that I don't want to actually work from my house, but I want the opportunity to not be in the office.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to be taking an approach, which will be some people actually fully can function in their roles working from home, and others cannot, like my design team, my e-com team. So I think we're taking a survey actually today of the team, like how many days would you like to work from home? How many days in the office? And just getting a temperature check from everybody, and depending on their role, just sort of being a little bit more flexible.
And that kind of brings up this idea of company culture, which I know is kind of front of mind because there are so many businesses, I'm sure yours being one of them, where you guys really worked to create some sort of culture, some sort of ethos. And, with COVID sweeping in or anything this uncertain, it's like this culture you work so hard to create is kind of recreated, whether you like it or not. What are some things you have in mind when we're on Zoom like this, or we're in our technology world now, to keep that culture going or to stay connected?
So ironically, our culture pre-pandemic was something we struggled with because it just felt like I couldn't figure out how to make the team itself felt very like each team was its own sort of segmented group.
Yeah.
And whether I did happy hours or we celebrated all the birthdays or we did our town halls or we had workouts or we did our volunteering, I just felt like there was still something that wasn't gelling.
Mm-hmm.
And since we have been working remotely, our culture has, I think, really defined itself, because I think you can see the care we've taken for our staff and the, knowing that you're working from home, your kids are driving you crazy, you're scared of Corona, you might have family members or friends that were hurt by it. And so I think that as a company, we've figured out our culture, ironically, being apart. So I guess the struggle for me is, if we are going to continue to work apart, how do we make sure that we are still cohesive as a company when this, returns to whatever normal is? So I'm working through that now. Like, how do we get the team together and still have that community feeling?
Yeah, and I know that this is like such a common question amongst entrepreneurs, is creating culture, because I think of a couple places, like for example, Trader Joe's. Like, I don't know if you've ever experienced going in there. Everybody has sunshine coming out of their face. And it's like there's something going on with that corporate culture that they've created over there. And I hear often that it's a challenge. Like, is there one thing that you found does seem to create some sort of connection as you're going remote and trying to keep your team together, or anything that entrepreneurs listening right now, or even people in corporate right now that want to kind of create better energy in their company, could think about with all of this tech and stuff like that?
I think, employees want to know what you stand for and your integrity. So whether it came down to how we had to let go of our staff, or how we communicated certain pay cuts or furloughs, down to my personal beliefs of riding the line between entertaining you, but also, during Corona, but also wanting to give business people tips and tricks, marketing wise, down to my stance on, the Black Lives Matter movement. I think they want to know that you stand behind your word, that you're honest and you have integrity, and then they trust you as a leader. And so I think that, and then when you involve them in, a lot of these decisions, we've made it as a group. So it wasn't, me and my brother just dictating this is how it's going to be. And I think we continue to ask people and get their voices heard, which I think really matters a lot right now. I mean, it matters always, but it's even more important right now.
Yeah, I can see that. And I also know that there's something about mystery in the mind of an employee and even an entrepreneur. It's like all of us don't like, our brain does not like to have a huge gap that we need to fill in, and our imagination can go off. So I think that transparency and that group decision making is probably really powerful for a nervous employee that really feels their livelihood could be on the line with their job. So really cool to hear that from you. And I know that you seem like an optimist, and that was something that I got when we spoke before this. And I just want to hear silver linings. Like, I think some people have been home long enough where they're like, there are no silver linings to COVID-19. This is all darkness. And you seem like really optimistic and nimble. And I know a lot of entrepreneurs kind of feel like, I want to give up right now. Like, what are some positive things that you're taking with you after this?
I think that when you are an entrepreneur, you have to remember what it feels like to be scrappy, to, be really creative with nothing, and to sort of be one step ahead of what is happening. And I think that, a silver lining is, as a founder after 15 years, to be able to know that sort of you have that muscle memory. You can go back to, how do we get new emails? How do we get new eyeballs? How do we sell handbags to people who frankly don't need to go anywhere, and to be able to figure that out is a great challenge. And then when it works, you get a little confident, and, you celebrate those successes, and your company stays intact. So I think, the first 2 weeks were really dark. My brother was like, you've got to snap out of this. Like, the only way we can get through this is if you're positive. And, we work together as a team to figure this out. And so I really took that to heart, because it's easy to go into a dark hole. It's easy to just read the news all day and just go, oh, what's the point? But if you love what you're doing, you have to fight for it. No one's going to just let this be a time where you're served success. This is kind of a breeding ground for entrepreneurs. Like, this is when if you can make it, not when it's easy, not when business is just simple. So I think now you're really, as an entrepreneur, defining yourself, and you're laying a breeding ground for how business is going to be done, 5-10 years from now. So I think stick it out and fight it if you love what you do and you love what you have, or if you don't, then find something you're passionate about and do it.
Yeah. And that's a silver lining. Like, I think a lot of people are using this reflective time to kind of reset their career, which is really cool to see. And, I don't know. I also think this kind of reminds me of self-love. Like, we hear a lot about self-love and yoga, and there's a lot of misunderstandings about what it is. Like, sometimes it sounds like having chocolates and taking a bubble bath, when really that could just be a slight form of escapism from all of the things. Sometimes self-love probably looks like making a budget sheet, looking at your company, like staying up later for this period and not opting out. And I also think, when I think about self-love, it's like a lot of people aren't challenged to have to practice that relationship with themselves until the sheets are ripped off of them and it's hard times, and this is just one version of it. Is there any other silver lining from a business standpoint that you're seeing where you're like, I actually forever want to change my business in this way, and thank God that I learned right now that this is what I want to do?
Yeah. I mean, when you look at how our business was set up before, I would say, again, 70% of our business was wholesale, and our entire company served that need. It took my mind share, my brother's mind share. The whole team was always constantly thinking about what these stores needed and wanted, and their specials and exclusives and all the stuff that comes along with working with them. And so we're really prioritizing us. What do we want to stand for as a brand? How deeply connected, even more so now than before, do we want to be with our consumer? We started a text message program that we have over 15,000 members of, because that's a new form to communicate. So being able to try these things has been a silver lining. Mm-hmm. Being able to see what happens with me being more as the founder on social has also, we've seen worked. Our cross promotional strategies with other brands, stuff we never would have considered before. Mm-hmm. Our giveaways, that might sound stupid, but we've generated almost 100,000 new emails in the last 3 months due to the cross promos and the giveaways. And so that's all new customers that we can market and sell to. So this time forces you to figure stuff out, and you have to get creative. Yeah. So I think, you learn what works and doesn't work, and just put fire on what does.
Yeah. And it seems like and I find this with a lot of successful entrepreneurs, successful being such a subjective word, like whatever that means to you, but that they have a good conversation going on in their head about failure. So it seems like you had those 2 dark weeks and then you kind of snapped into positivity, which is a lot of resilience, because it was a really tough time. So for you to just take a couple weeks down and pop back up, that's resilience, And I think sometimes people think if they're down, they're not resilient. It's like, well, how fast can you bounce back up? So as a mom of 3, I imagine that you are navigating kind of going to bed at night with like the nighttime scaries perhaps in your head every now and again with this, but then also wanting to like be a present, loving mom. Like, how do you manage your time, especially with this, like burnout? Any sort of time management tips I think would be so good for anybody listening.
Okay. So I want to be transparent and say that when this started, I knew myself and I knew with my husband working that we would not survive this, having to homeschool the kids and work without help. And so I bribed our nanny to come live with us for 4 days a week and then drive home on the weekends. So for those 4 days, she's keeping the children alive. I don't have to worry about dishes and laundry. We love to cook, so we do that obviously. But I think, when school was in session, my husband took 2 hours and I took 2 hours and I blocked out my calendar, and that's what we did for that time. So I'd say throughout the day, the kids got 4 hours of school.
Mm-hmm.
That was honestly harder than working, trying to get my daughter to learn math and her and I having a screaming match with a 5-year-old. So I can't say I'm perfect, but I think us being able to say, okay, this is the time. And then that's my whole focus. I don't have calls. I just don't worry about all that. It did mean late nights because I would catch up after they go to bed.
Yep.
Once summer hit, the stress of not having to do that every day was huge. And we just were like, you guys got to entertain yourselves. Like, we're working. And so they used to not know how to do that, when they had people to provide activities for them. And so they're getting creative with what they're doing and they're not dying. So
that's a success.
It's not perfect, but I also think you have to take your expectations down right now. Like, yes, they have a little bit more TV in the morning. Why? Because I can work out then, or am I fully there and present with them all the time? No, but I'm not trying to judge myself or punish myself. We're in an extreme situation that is, they seem somewhat happy, and my husband and I don't hate each other yet. So like,
that's a success.
There's a bare minimum of like, let's not aim for this to be like this bucolic time where everyone's just like, oh, it's all perfect.
Yeah. I actually read some research recently because writing for Forbes, I get data sent to me all the time. And one piece of data I just got was saying that I think it was around 28% of couples say that they are like worse off with the pandemic, which actually I thought was like not as many as it could be.
Yeah.
But that like 5 or 6% of couples as a whole are like on the brink of completely parting ways and they would say as a result of COVID. So that is a success. And I think that ultimately there's probably some empowerment for your kids watching a hardworking mom and dad. It's like every kid has a different upbringing and experience. So that's amazing. And is there anything you're doing with your team and your time? Because I'm guessing that you need to put a lot of time now into innovation and new. And then also you've got these new leads. You were saying you're doing a giveaway. So is there anything you're doing when you do have that kind of uninterrupted 4-hour block or whatever it is, when your nanny's around or whatever support you have, to say, okay, I'm going to deep dive and focus. Here's a couple things or hacks that I use to get my time done.
I've been trying to segment out and sort of batch what I'm doing, so that if I'm doing content creation, that's all I'm worrying about. If I'm doing a podcast, I, will do 2 or 3 at a time. If I have my email set aside for 2 hours, that's what I'm doing, so that I'm not constantly switching activities and switching mindsets.
Yeah.
So I think that I don't know what you call that, just trying.
Batching. Yeah.
Batching. Okay. So batching as much as possible. And also making sure that I just have times, maybe it's 30 minutes where nothing is happening. So I can go for a walk or cook lunch, that I'm not just sitting at the computer for 15 hours a day.
Yeah.
I think it's key. And because we don't have the commute, and we, don't have to worry about getting home at a certain time. Like, let yourself have that break. You need that break mentally to just step away. Or I can go for a run at 4 o'clock and come back and finish my day. So I try not to just go too crazy. Like the first 2 weeks, I was back to back every minute, no breathing room. And mentally I was not okay.
Mm-hmm. You
So
know,
I think,
I read a study a long time ago at Stanford. It was saying like most of your best ideas do not come when you're at work. And I'm guessing that when you're cooking with your husband or you're out with your kids, like something will hit you. And that's really exciting. I know a lot of entrepreneurs right now, and even people in corporate, are wanting to sustain their career. And for me, when as an entrepreneur, starting e-courses and all the things I've done or writing my book, it's like, I remember the beginning just being about like getting revenue and making it happen, improving the concept. And nobody really talks about sustaining and keeping something alive. Like, do you have any lessons learned or advice for new entrepreneurs or even people in corporate who are maybe thinking they want to start a side hustle around sustaining their business or like getting to know their customer or just creating something that's really valuable that can last?
I think that you have to view your career as something that is long term. I think that young entrepreneurs or people that want to switch just see what happens on Instagram, or they click their, Amazon and it comes tomorrow, and they
Yeah.
get in their Uber, and we're used to this click lifestyle, and your career is not that. When I look back, I didn't have that expectation. I knew it was a long game. And so like, know that this is going to be a 5, 10, 15-year journey. My first sign of success was several years in, and I didn't have to check my bank account to go see if I could afford to eat dinner out. That was like, oh, I've made it.
Yeah.
My account has $100 in it, so I can eat out, tonight. So I think that you have to reframe what success looks like. It's not just magazine covers, celebrities, and being Instagram famous. And to really find a product that has traction and resonates. And how you do that is take a lot of surveys, ask your customer what they think, what they don't think, be open to that feedback, and really keep innovating and creating that perfect product. You see it with your iPhone updates, right? There's updates every few months because they're innovating and improving based on user feedback. So I think that you need to take that approach with your career and find that thing that works. And I think the more you can connect with your customer, the more you can get to know them, that relationship is invaluable.
It's so fun to listen to a mind that is in constant motion, at a time where I think that stagnance can be quite tempting. Like, what are a couple things you're doing right now that you feel really excited are going to just set you up for more sustainability in the future?
Well, I think our text message program, we have a live streaming, we do a lot of live streaming with Chinese streamers in our stores, which has been a great revenue source for us as a company. We have a couple of other things technology wise that are in works that'll just not something that you'll ever notice, but that optimize our website, our merchandising, our A/B testing that we do on different audiences. We're going to be trying TV for the first time because the costs are so low to advertise there right now, that we have heard from a lot of different people that it's actually more lucrative than advertising on a Facebook or Instagram. So that'll start in July. What else?
I've been seeing a lot of like different ads on YouTube TV, and it's been so fun for me because I love YouTube TV, like just got my subscription, and it's like kind of refreshing seeing commercials that are nowhere else.
Right.
I think it's kind of a pleasant pattern interrupt for the brain. So I get that. And I know that you really believe in making an impact, and you have your Female Founder Collective. So I'm sure that there's so many female-owned businesses that are turning to you, looking at you, asking for support, and getting a lot out of being in a community. Like, is there anything we can share right now about how you use community or get value from community, whether you're creating one or in one? Like, what is that doing for your life? Because I know for me, I've got a community of women in Los Angeles that just are everything to me. And the closer we get as friends, the more magic happens in my career, and there's no agenda behind it. What are you doing to kind of have that little time for yourself and also create that for others?
I'm definitely not getting any of that time for myself, I'll be honest.
I'm available, Rebecca.
I think I come as close to that as the few group, friends that are willing to see me, who are not scared of getting sick.
Yeah.
That's when I can go on a walk or a kayak ride and we can just talk business, but also do something that's good for, being outdoors. As far as creating it for others, we have an incredible team at the Female Founder Collective. So we've really pivoted from, something that was a live event where you get these resources and seminars to weekly seminars based on what we survey from the community. How do you increase eyeballs on your site? All these different value adds that help our customer. She's not our customer, the part of the community, get education. And then when you do belong to a community, quote unquote, let's say of founders, it only gives you as much as you put in. So, if you need something and you make that ask, whether it's on our Slack group or our Google groups, people reply, and the synergies of, people wheeling and dealing all day long are occurring on the Slack, whether it's here's a promo code, here's an offer, does anyone know of a, does anyone have a, so those questions are back and forth all day long. And then we want to provide, the layer on top of founders teaching as well.
And I'm noticing that whether you have time for community or not right now, it's so understandable, but I'm seeing like you have such bright skin and you look put together and well, which I feel like even if we're on Zoom, it can be very tempting to just, pajama pants on the bottom, maybe makeup on top. Like, are you doing anything for your wellness that you think is like a game changer for all of us? Because I'm revamping my wellness routine. So maybe this is my own little question. And by the way, anybody who's watching, please post your questions. We can answer some of them soon. But yeah, what are you doing to stay so well?
Well, I take a lot of vitamins, especially right now. If anyone wants, they can DM me for the list later. I can go into great detail on everything I take and why. The people that are able to come through this healthy have strong immune systems, and I firmly believe in that. I am exercising, shocker, 30 to 45 minutes a day. Again, that's when my children are watching TV, and that is okay with me. I'm drinking a lot of water. This stupid little thing changed my life, but I carry it around. So I have like 5 of these a day.
Wow.
And I'm putting on a lot of moisturizer. And then anytime I have a phone call, I'm outside, so I'm making sure that I'm getting real vitamin D. So I can, feel better and not feel like, oh my God, I just spent all day inside. What happened? No, if I'm on a call that's not a Zoom, I'm outside, or I'm doing emails, like I'm outside enjoying, fresh air.
I just started supplementing. So I'm now taking like an entire shelf every morning because I totally get what you're saying. It's all about boosting immunity versus just kind of submitting to this idea that we're all going to get sick, which is so unfortunate and sad that so many people are right now. And okay, so we talked a lot about success, and I want to know what it means to you, because I find that as someone, you talk about you work with your brother, which is really a beautiful thing, probably has its own challenges. I've worked with my brother before. What does success mean for you, especially during this time? Is it being redefined?
So I think that success is definitely being redefined. I really think we want to come out of this with the customer saying, wow, not only do I love her bags, but I know her better. I know what she stands for. She's not only just being a corporation that makes money, she's giving back and she's helping other women and she's helping Black founders. And, just like that is success when the customer is like, oh, thank you for doing all of this. Not that I need the validation, but, to have someone appreciate more than just, I made a nice bag. So success is also coming out of this and being in business. I think there are a lot of companies that I'm watching sadly not make it.
Yeah.
And success is like, we got through it. We're alive,
Yeah. And as you're writing your book, which I'm so excited about for you, having just written mine, I'm like, that's a process, and may the force be with you. What are a couple lessons learned as you're writing where you're like, wow, I think everybody who has a business or is really caring about their career, they should really consider this lesson, as you're kind of looking back on the history of your brand and all the things you've learned?
I would say that number one is people are usually so scared to ask. And I know that one thing that I never whether it was scary or not, I knew in order to get anything, I had to ask, whether it's help or a favor or an introduction or will you take a meeting? And you're going to get told no. So you can't be like, oh, well, I asked and I just kept hearing the word no. You're going to get told no all the fucking time. Sorry, I'm swearing. So it's really about getting used to that and being okay with it and tweaking your pitch or your ask, coming back at a later date. So don't be afraid to ask. And also I think the idea of failure, so many people are afraid to fail and they tie an emotion to it that's personal. Mm-hmm. And so I think that, I interviewed someone for my podcast, the founder of Majuri. She makes direct to consumer, like fine jewelry.
Yeah.
And she said, we have a failure funnel. We're trying something. And if it doesn't work and it fails, it goes into the failure funnel, just like software companies do. Like, do you think that these engineers like berate themselves when, that iteration doesn't work? No, it's like, oh, failure funnel, done, next. And so I think it's disconnecting your personal emotion from a failure. Yeah. So that you can keep going. You have to be resilient and you have to be like those dolls that get punched and roll back up, because the hits are going to come every day. I started a newsletter on LinkedIn that's called You Can't Make This Shit Up Club, because you can't make the stuff up that happens to you as an entrepreneur or in a corporate environment. And so you have to get resilient. You have to think of that as a muscle and not let failure happen, but when it happens, don't run from it,
Yeah, I think that holding failure lightly and holding the word no lightly is like so key. And I'm curious, like, how do you manage your nervous system when you're putting yourself out there? Because I find that I do a lot of keynotes. Obviously that's shifted this year, but every time I walk on stage, whether it's 5 people or like 10,000 people, like I got to manage my nervous system. Like I can feel it. It doesn't, there's not yet a moment where I've become a pro. And even back when I left my career in counterterrorism and started speaking on stages, I remember the first time I spoke, I think I was after Guy Kawasaki, and there was just some amazing people speaking. And I remember being like, this is my first time on a big stage. And I realized all of them were nervous except for Guy. He was kind of like just another day in the life, but all of the other speakers and CEOs were nervous. Like, what are some things you do to take care of like your soul when you've got like a fire hose coming at you? And kind of like, what are you sharing in your book around that kind of management with yourself?
I think specifically to speaking engagements or just in general?
I mean, speaking is good because everybody doesn't like to, like it's such a fear. What is it really actually almost right behind death or something like that? That just blows my mind. But speaking or just taking risks in general and managing your nervous system.
I can't say that I've ever connected or thought about the two, with the exception of speaking engagements. I hear you on that.
Yeah.
I think, again, I feel like taking risks is like utilizing a muscle. So we've taken a ton of risks. We were the first fashion brand to embrace technology, to switch to a see by wear format, to, have the most connected stores in the past. And so I think that, it was always scary and you're like, oh, what'll people think? Oh, I don't know. And we had a gentleman who was consulting for us. He said, every single time you guys try and follow the path and you follow what, the fashion elite are doing, you fail. Like, stop doing that, because every time you don't is where you win. And when he pointed out enough scenarios of us trying to have, a runway show made with clothing no one would ever wear, or trying to appease the Vogues of the world, which they would never care about us as a brand, it didn't work. And then he's like, here's 5 examples where you went your own way and it worked. And after he pointed that out, I was like, I'm ripping this parachute off and I'm just going to keep jumping off the cliffs, because some will fall flat, some will work. But when you get a win, it's really impactful. So I don't know how to say internally how I manage that, but the more you try it and you take those risks, I think the easier it gets.
Yeah. Whenever I feel like I'm on an edge for myself, I've gotten a journal and an exercise that I've really liked to do. And I don't do it all the time, because sometimes I go into the mindset like journaling is going to take up my whole morning, like I get into that. but I do journal like multiple times a week. And I would say that one thing I do when I feel like I'm on an edge is I write down all of the stressful thoughts so that they're not in my head and they're on the page. And most of the time when I look at them, it's kind of like, oh, I can see right through all of you. Like, these are not even that stressful. They're not even that scary. The worst case scenario is not even that big of a deal. And it kind of sets me free. Final question that I have for you, and I could ask you so many. I can tell you do podcasts because I have my podcast and I always can find a good conversationalist, but how do you stay creative? Like, I can see your handbags, I can see your products. You are a very creative being. And I think all of us have that little gift inside of us, whether we're tapping into it or not. What are some things you do or things you notice about your creativity that perhaps we can take on?
Well, I will definitely say this. It is not just me. I'd be lying if I said I'm the only one to come up with any of our ideas ever. I have an incredible team. One of my designers has been with me for 14 years, and we've been in business for 15 years. So we talk the same. Basically, our kids can't tell our voices apart. So I think at this point, our minds are on the same track creatively. So I trust her implicitly with what she comes up with.
Mm-hmm.
What I do to stay creative is I listen to a lot of great music. Prior to this, I got to travel a lot for work, and I'm always inspired by new places, new cultures, food, the vintage shopping, all that. I can't do that right now. So, my creativity is sort of pivoted in a way into, if we're going to all be wearing sweatsuits, like, let's make the best one we can. Or, how do I come up with a video that'll entertain and delight my consumer? And so a lot of my creativity is actually shifted more into content than it has into design, because we've shrunk the amount of designs we're putting out. We've shrunk our product SKU count. So I think that each one of those items is going to be more special because there's less of it, but I'm really relying heavily on the design team for that. That's their full focus all the time. And I have to do a podcast, content creation, copyright the emails, do these talks. And so my mind creatively is in other areas right now.
Well, that's beautiful. I think that keeps you creative in all ways, right? To be like shifting it up and giving your brain a little bit of novelty. So I'm so grateful that you've been here with us at SoFi. I'm wishing you so much grace as you keep pivoting. And is there anything I haven't asked you that I should have asked you?
No, not that I can think of.
I know I can like discounts maybe, or promo codes, anything.
Yes, I have. Yes, everyone who's viewing, write this down. SoFi XRM30 for 30% off till the end of July. So get shopping.
Yes, SoFi XRM30. I will be on my way to the website right now. Thanks again for your time, and just so excited for everybody to watch this, and appreciate you a lot.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Take care.
Bye.